Hey guys, welcome back to more HOA stories. In this video, a homeowner association Karen tried to have my 8-year-old sister arrested for using a dumpster that Karen claimed belongs to the HOA. Let's dive right into the video. The first one is titled, HOA does not allow me to cut my tree, it might destroy my house though. Posted on r/legal advice. So I made a mistake 3 years ago of buying a property in an HOA neighborhood. At the time the regulations were relaxed, but a new board has now taken over and they are nuts. Last year, after my neighbor cut down a tree and the HOA was mad about it, they made a new rule that to cut down a tree you must get HOA permission, and if you remove a tree without said HOA permission, you must pay the HOA the value of the tree. Basically, they consider the tree to be a value to the whole neighborhood, not just you. My problem is that I have a very mature tree, the arborist said around 80+ years, that had been struck by lightning before. I brought out an arborist to assess it and see if it could be helped, and the arborist says it cannot be saved. They said it's in dangerous condition and should be removed immediately, and if I don't get it down before it starts to drop, it will do serious damage to my property or my neighbors. I informed the HOA of my plan to cut down the tree. They said no, they said that they need proof that it is actually dangerous. I got a statement from the arborist who also provided the diagram of its faults. Despite this, the HOA still says no. Someone on the board insists that he knows trees and mine is apparently fine, and that the arborist is just looking to make bank by referring me to someone who will give them a cut of what I pay them to cut it down. So I've gone to 4 meetings to plead my case, paid for a second arborist's opinion, and have gone directly to individual board members to persuade them, but nothing has worked. At this point, the tree is such a liability, I've made plans to have it removed beginning next week. I cannot afford for it to come down. But my other concern is, the HOA claims if I take it down without permission, I owe them the value of the tree. I cannot pay them thousands of dollars just because they are unreasonable. In fact, I believe they are intentionally not giving me permission, so I will be forced to pay the money. So what now? And yeah, Ripestars, let me know what you would do in this situation. And indeed, it does sound a little bit like the HOA tries to force OP to just pay the money. Comment number 1, this is lawyer time I think. A consult with a real estate attorney won't cost that much money, and it certainly will be cheaper than the fine the HOA is threatening to levy. Or I guess it's called levy. Either way, comment number 2 said, unfortunately I have to agree. At this point you are looking at attempting to get an order from a judge to require the HOA to permit the tree's removal, otherwise you risk damage to your property and then suing the HOA for the costs should it occur. But well, your guess as to which one is cheaper, faster or easier. And then OP answered this comment saying, the arborist says it's an immediate danger, so I've made plans to have it taken down starting Monday, one way or another. If the main split falls, it will destroy my home and garage. At this point, should I be cancelling that and trying to get an order from a judge? I'm worried about how long that might take though. Upon the advice here, I've called half a dozen lawyers and no one even wants to meet with me until next week. Update to the story. Hey all, I've got a huge update on the whole tree situation with the HOA. Buckle up because things escalated fast. So after my last post, I decided to take the advice of many of you gave and contacted an attorney specializing in HOA law. Best decision I could have made. The lawyer listened to everything I had to say about the HOA refusing to let me cut down that dangerous tree and immediately told me that they did not have a leg to stand on, and according to Minnesota's state law, property owners have the right to remove trees that pose a danger to their property. The HOA rules cannot override that no matter how much they try to bully me. It was nice to finally hear someone say that. Armed with this legal advice, I felt more confident, but before I made any moves, my lawyer suggested that we send a formal letter to the HOA board. This letter basically outlined my rights as a homeowner, cited the Minnesota statutes that gave me the right to remove the tree, and demanded that they either allow me to remove the tree immediately or be held liable for any damages that might occur if it fell. I sent the letter via certified mail so they couldn't claim that they never got it, and sure enough, I got a response from the HOA within a week. The tone of their letter was a complete 180 from before. Suddenly they were open to discussions and wanted to work with me to resolve the issue. It was obvious that they knew they were in the wrong, but they still wanted to negotiate. I was not having it though. There was nothing to negotiate, the tree was dangerous and I had the right to remove it. Period. My lawyer advised me to give them one more chance to comply, just so we had everything on record, so I agreed to meet with the HOA board. The meeting was tense to say the least. They tried to pull the same nonsense about how the tree added to the aesthetic of the neighborhood and how other residents might complain if I removed it. I calmly pointed out that no one was gonna care about aesthetics when a huge tree branch came crashing through someone's roof during the next storm. They tried to argue that the tree was not that dangerous, and I countered by showing them the pictures I had of the damage it had already done to my driveway and sidewalk. I also brought up the arborist report, which clearly stated the tree was rotting and could fall at any time. At this point, they were scrambling for excuses. The board president even tried to say that if the tree was removed, I would have to plant a new one in its place at my own expense, and it would have to meet their strict guidelines. I told them that was fine by me, but the dead tree had to go first. After hours of back and forth, I finally put my foot down. I told them in no uncertain terms that I had every right to remove the tree, and if they tried to stop me again, I would take legal action against them. I reminded them that their own negligence in this matter would make them liable for any damage caused by the tree if they continued to block me. They backed down. They knew that they did not have a case. In the end, they agreed to let me hire a professional tree removal company and did not even make me jump through hoops with more permits or nonsense like that. A week later, the tree was finally gone. I paid for the removal myself, but it was worth every penny just to get rid of that hazard. And to my surprise, a few neighbors actually came by to thank me. It turns out they'd been worried about that tree for years, but were too scared to go up against the HOA. One neighbor even told me the HOA had threatened to fine her when she tried to cut down a different tree a few years ago, and the best part? A few days after the tree was removed, we had a nasty windstorm. It would have taken down that tree for sure, and who knows what kind of damage it would have done. It was a huge relief knowing I had made the right call. Comment number 1, legal action really is the only language these HOAs understand. Good for you for lawyering up early. The outcome speaks for itself. Comment number 2, man, I love how you stood your ground and did not let them push you around. HOAs love to act like they are untouchable, but you showed them what is up. And yeah, Ripestars, if an HOA ever tries to bully you around, if you have the funds, please lawyer up and teach them a lesson. And if more and more people do this, maybe at some point HOAs won't try to bully innocent people anymore. Either way, the next one is titled, Entitled HOA Karen Tries to Have My 8-year-old Sister Arrested for Using Our Dumpster. So this happened a few years ago, so bear with me as I try to get all of the details right. So I lived with my little sister Mia in a building with multiple apartments. The building was just outside of an HOA community, but we were not a part of it. We had a landlord, but he did not answer to the HOA. The building also had a large dumpster that was a few hundred feet from the building and had hugged the line of the HOA's territory. There had apparently been a few mishaps with people from the HOA dumping their trash into it, but our landlord was good about making sure the HOA board knew that it was not a part of their property. Well, apparently the head of the HOA board, who I'm gonna call Karen, did not believe our landlord. Mia and I found out the hard way. One of the things our landlord asked for us to do as tenants was to make sure that the area around the dumpster was clean and clear. The last thing he wanted was a bunch of bags or large items blocking the dumpster and then getting a fine. Everyone in the building did their part, including my little sister. Mia was around 8 years old when this happened. She was just minding her own business, drawing on the pavement around the parking lot with chalk. I had gotten her a big set, one of those ones that come in a plastic container with a little handle. I think every kid had or knew someone with that kind of set. Since it was new, Mia had made sure to collect the packaging and stick it in her pocket before she started drawing. It was a sunny afternoon on a weekend, I think it was a Sunday, there was not much traffic in the building and I was inside our apartment. I kept the window open so I could check up on Mia, and I was on the bottom floor of the building so I could run out to check on her if I needed to. After Mia finished up a few drawings, she grabbed the plastic she had in her pockets and dropped it into the dumpster. I remember hearing a car door slam shut, but Mia filled me in on what exactly happened after she did that. Karen was apparently watching my sister for who knows how long and decided that she had seen enough after my sister disposed of her trash. She came up to my sister and yelled at her, claiming that Mia was trespassing on HOA property and was also illegally dumping trash into the dumpster that was, according to her, owned by the HOA. Mia, literally a child, started to cry. I heard her from the window and immediately went outside to confront whoever or whatever had made her cry. When I saw it was Karen, I knew I was in for some sort of issue. Just in case things got out of hand, I started to record on my phone, sticking it in my pocket to make sure whatever Karen wanted to say or accuse us of was recorded. Karen was a bit of a presence around our building. There was always something she accused a neighbor of, mostly trespassing on HOA property. With how close our building towed the line that separated us from the HOA, she started to patrol the border to try and catch someone trespassing, even though they actually weren't. Everyone was tired of her in my building, and I could only imagine what she was like as an HOA president. Anyway, I had my phone on to record as I approached Karen, asking what was going on here. She claimed that Mia was illegally dumping on HOA property and said that she would have her fined for this. I remained polite even though my little sister was crying in my arms, and told Karen that our landlord had gone over this several times. The dumpster was not an HOA dumpster, it belonged to the apartments. Karen did not want to hear it, claiming that I was just lying to cover for the criminal that was my sister. Poor Mia was almost inconsolable at this point, and I was ready to just take her back into the apartment and pretend that Karen did not exist. And that was when Karen took out her phone. She made a show of dialing 911, claiming that she was being harassed by two women who were refusing to let her leave the property. I could not believe that she was calling the cops over this, but I knew that leaving the area would not be a good idea until I could explain the situation to the police. So then I sat down with Mia in the parking lot, trying to keep her calm, and waited for someone to show up. The police did arrive, just one cruiser, thank goodness, and two officers came out of the car to begin questioning us. The cop with Karen seemed to be getting a whole different story from her, now having her claim that my sister assaulted her. The cop that came to me asked what happened, and while still trying to calm my little sister down, told him about Karen approaching my sister, calling her names and accusing her of a crime that was not actually a crime. I asked the cop if I could reach out to my landlord to show proof that the dumpster was not on HOA property. The cop agreed to that, and I used a few moments to turn off my recording, making sure to save it and then email it to myself, a habit I picked up from a TV show. Always good to have a backup of your evidence, by the way. So I called my landlord, who was thankfully in the building, and asked him for any proof of where the HOA's property line started. He came out of the building with the plans for the building showing where exactly the property ended, and apparently he had the document out in the open, as that was what he used whenever he had to let the HOA board know that the dumpster was not theirs. His exit from the building brought a few other people out to watch what was unfolding. Karen recognized a few of my neighbors, accusing them of being just as guilty as my sister for the crime of supposedly trespassing on HOA property. There was a bit of a ruckus with that, but the cops got everyone calm after a few minutes. Then one of the cops turned to me and asked if there was any other proof I had that would show that Karen was making a false claim. He apologized but wanted to be sure, as Karen had brought other things to the local police department and she tended to stretch her stories. I handed him my phone, allowing him to hear the recording of Karen yelling at me and my sister my insistence that the dumpster was not on her property, and her phone call to 911 while my sister was sobbing in the background. Karen accused me of tampering with the audio, but the officers were quick to turn on her, since they'd been watching me the whole time and I wouldn't have the time to edit the audio file without it taking more than a few minutes. The residents of the building came to my support, ready to provide more evidence of Karen, always stretching the truth or accusing them of crimes they didn't commit. The officers asked them to submit a formal complaint for whatever Karen had accused them of. Then they turned their attention to Karen. I thought they would arrest her on the spot, but they let her off with a warning and a citation for calling the police for something that was not an emergency or a crime. They warned her that doing something like that again could get her a few days in jail for filing a false report on someone and harassing someone on their property. Karen was quick to leave us alone after that. By the time my sister and I had moved out, she apparently had so many citations against her from the residents of our building that she was fined to near bankruptcy. The HOA board did not want to have someone with that kind of reputation at its head, so they were quick to dump her. The last I heard, she moved out of the city to try and start fresh. So yeah, no HOA for me please, I would take a landlord any day. The next one is titled, You Cannot Lie. So I got into a car accident a few days ago. It was minor but mostly my fault. I was doing a K-turn out of a residential driveway on a busy street and while backing up hit a car that was speeding to get past. No airbags were deployed and both cars were completely drivable. This accident happened about 4:45. In the car was a middle-aged father and mom with a toddler in a car seat in the back next to the door that was hit. The family did not speak English. The father got out of the car and did the immediate "look at my damage" woes that come with an accident. He tells me there's a baby in the back and shows me the still sleeping child. His wife immediately gets on the phone with who I believe is the police. We pull into a parking lot to get off the busy road and wait. About 20 minutes later, I grabbed their hubcap out of the road and handed it to the gentleman, and he opened the back door again and showed me the sleeping baby. It's now about 5:40 and the couple's niece and her boyfriend show up. They immediately demand money to fix the car, and I told them that we will go through insurance. She asks several times if I really want to go that way, and I told her there was no way I had the money to fix both cars, so insurance it is. She proceeds to call the police at that point. The aunt was on the phone with her and not the police. Fine, I will wait even longer for the police to come then. Around 6:15, the toddler finally wakes up and starts crying. It's now been asleep for at least an hour and a half and most likely is hungry. At 6:30, the cops show up and ask the niece if the baby needs paramedics, and the niece, who did not show up until almost an hour after the initial collision, starts to lie to the police about how the baby has been crying since the accident and to send them. I've been in a few accidents over my years as a driver, and now I'm starting to smell what this really is. It's an insurance scam. I looked through my dashcam and was able to prove that they sped through a red light right before the driveway where I turned from. When the cop came to ask me what happened, I told him my side of the events and showed the dashcam proving the light was red in the direction they claimed to be coming from. For good measure, I told the police that the baby only started crying about 15 minutes prior to when they got there. The niece started screaming that I was lying. I then told the police officer if what she says is true, then I would like to make a claim against them for child endangerment. They claim that baby was crying for the last 2 hours from the accident and never once did they call 911 for medical assistance. They called their niece to come here instead of emergency services and only asked for them after they were offered. The car seat also is not center mounted like required by state law and should be cited. At that point, the niece is calling me every name in the book, like she just found I cheated on her from Jerry Springer. I then calmly tell the officer that my dashcam was running the entire time we were stopped and I have it on record when the child woke up. The officer looked at her and said, "Ma'am, it's a crime to lie on a police report. Was the baby crying since the accident?" All of a sudden, she now had to check with her aunt and uncle to find out. She withdrew her claim and the officer tossed out her witness statement because she was not an actual witness to anything. Hopefully no BS lawsuit comes from it. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. The farming business in Southeast Asia was not very kind to me a couple of years ago. I was on the verge of losing everything, and in order to keep myself afloat, I went up north to work for my cousin who owned a factory until things would pick back up again. I was gone for almost a year and saving every penny so that when I was ready to go back, I would be okay. So while I was gone, the HOA in the area felt like they had free reign to take over my property and do anything they wanted on it. The HOA is not really like those in the West from what I can see online at least. Ours are even more controlling and have less regulations they need to follow. I'm no expert on these things, so if you want to know more, I think there are stories of people explaining the whole situation. Anyway, I never bothered joining this HOA since I could barely keep the farm alive with what I was making. It was getting to a point of if me or the cows get to eat, so I did not have extra money to give to these people. I knew that they did not like it and were always very passive-aggressive to me before I left. When I came back, I found out that they had a field day while I was gone and a huge chunk of my farm was dug up and replaced. Right where my crops used to go was now a giant parking garage so that the people no longer needed to park on the street. Complete with numbered spots and assigned parking that people could get if they paid the HOA for it monthly. They were turning a profit from this and using my land as the space for it all without asking about it or trying to cut me in. I was beyond angry after I saved all this money and my crops were destroyed. I saw one of the HOA leaders parking his car in the lot the next day and ran over before he could get away from me. Me, look what you did to my farm. You cannot just dig the whole thing up and build on my property. HOA, You were gone for a long time. The HOA needed to help the people with the parking situation here, so we had no choice but to build the parking garage. Me, you had no right to do that. I still owned the land even if I was gone. Were you even planning on telling me or sending me a share of the profits? HOA, there are no profits. Me, that's a dirty lie. I spoke to my neighbor yesterday and he told me how much he pays for the parking. HOA, all the money goes into the HOA funds. Me, I'm going to get every car removed and every person I see arrested for trespassing and they will only have you to blame. HOA, it says in our bylaws that if the community is in dire need of something, we have the right to use any and all HOA land to fix it. You cannot do anything. Me, it's not HOA land if I'm not in the HOA. HOA, good luck trying to prove that, you farm peasant. I was insulted on so many levels from this guy and kind of wanted to just fight him. He came from the city and didn't have any respect for people in the area that had farms and worked hard for a living. I did not have a fancy suit like him, but I knew that I was right and he couldn't just take away my farm because I was away for a while. All the money I saved to restart my farm had to go to a lawyer who could help me fight them and get the parking garage taken away. He warned me that it would not be fast and they could drag out the fight for a long time. It turns out they had fake papers saying that I joined the HOA, so I had to prove that wrong before I could do anything else. That meant going through years of bank records to show that I never paid them anything, as well as getting them to do the same. When we finally proved that I was not a member, the fight was still not over. They were trying to prove to the court that me leaving meant I abandoned the property and it gave them the right to use it. Again, a long drawn-out process where my lawyer did things that are beyond my range of understanding. All I know is that one day I got the call and he said it was good news. I was able to finally go to court and plead why I wanted the garage removed. He told me to keep my statement simple and just include the facts, no feelings or thoughts. So I said where I went and the reason for leaving the farm. I got asked questions about maintaining the property and paying my bills. I had proof of both and showed them to the court. I got asked about profits made from the parking garage and I told them I got none. The HOA had run out of options when it came to a defense for the parking garage. It was already decided it was not their property and it had not been abandoned either. I guess this judge had been dealing with HOAs before because he seemed just annoyed with them more than anything else. He gave them a long-winded speech about how they couldn't do anything they wanted and just claimed it was for the HOA in the belief that they could get away with it. That he was going to judge in my favor and we had to come to some type of agreement regarding the parking garage. I wanted the thing gone no matter how harsh it seemed. My neighbors would lose out on a parking spot, but I needed somewhere to plant my crops. The HOA also needed to fully pay for it to be removed and new ground for my crops to be placed. The last thing he did for me was telling them that I was entitled to half of the profits they made the entire time the garage was being used. Meanwhile, also not giving in to their crap of it being not for profit. However, that was not the last straw because it turned out with all the false paperwork they were being arrested for fraud as well. Plus my lawyer pressed charges for destroying my property. All of those main HOA board leaders were going to jail and the ones that weren't got told to shut this terrible HOA down. It took a week for the parking garage to be destroyed and I'll admit that the neighbors all hating me was not fun. Finally getting to start my farm again replaced that feeling with joy though. After working in a factory setting and then not being able to do anything, I was feeling kind of depressed. Some people are just made for working outside in the sun and I'm one of those people. I grew up on a farm too and I don't plan to do anything else for the rest of my life. Every penny I got from the HOA went into my farm starting up again. From crops to animals, I was back on track with my life. The industry was doing better, so hopefully I will never have to leave my farm again. This guy might have had a nice suit and a city education, but he got schooled by a farmer that only learned what his father knew. My advice is that the city boys need to stay in the city and leave the farmers out in the open to run things the right way. And yeah guys, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. And also check out my podcast by searching for Ripestories on Spotify, Amazon, Audible and other podcast platforms. You will often find exclusive episodes and early access to new content. Furthermore, please check out my Patreon by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or my YouTube membership program for even more exclusive stories. Thank you so much and I will see you again tomorrow.